said she would be the most beautiful bride the village had ever seen. They didn't know she would return to take their souls. In the year 1903, in a mist-laden English village called Wolf's Hollow, the air was heavy with the scent of rain, earth, and rotting leaves. The village was small, lined with crooked cobblestone paths, ivy-covered stone cottages, and lanterns that flickered weakly against the creeping fog each evening. At the heart of Wolf's Hollow stood the widow's oak, a gnarled, blackened tree that loomed like a shadow against the dawn. They said it was cursed. They said it whispered. And they said the souls of those betrayed were trapped beneath its roots. Eleanor Wolfe was to be married that night. She was the last of the Wolfe line, a family once powerful, but now withering, like the dying ivy on their crumbling estate walls. Her pale skin, dark hair, and striking green eyes had made her a legend in the village. But behind her beauty was sorrow, a quiet sadness that made even the children of the village fall silent when she passed. Thomas Hale was her betrothed, a handsome young man from the next town, with dark hair slicked back and eyes as cold as the steel he claimed to forge in his father's shop. But Thomas's family had secrets, and they whispered of gold and hidden veins of iron beneath the Wolfe lands. As dusk fell, the rain stopped, leaving puddles that reflected the lanterns hung around the small church where Eleanor would wed Thomas. The villagers gathered, eager for something to celebrate, their breath turning to fog in the cold evening air. Eleanor stepped into the church, her white gown trailing behind her, lace brushing against the cold stone floor. A crown of lilies adorned her hair, the scent mixing with the dampness and the faint burning oil of the lanterns. She smiled softly, though her eyes darted toward Thomas, who stood waiting at the altar. Thomas's smile was too perfect, too calm. His hands trembled slightly as she approached, but not from love. Eleanor noticed but said nothing. The priest spoke the vows, and Eleanor's voice was a soft bell, clear and hopeful. When Thomas spoke, his words were steady, but in his eyes a storm raged. They were pronounced man and wife, and the bells of Wolf's Hollow rang, echoing into the darkening sky. The villagers cheered, clapping, and children laughed as they tossed petals into the cold air. The reception was held in the clearing near the widow's oak, lanterns swaying in the breeze, tables covered in simple bread, cheese, and roasted lamb. Wine flowed, and laughter filled the night as the mist began to roll back in, swallowing the forest edges. Eleanor danced with the children, her gown swirling around her as she lifted them into the air, her laughter ringing like wind chimes. Thomas stood by, speaking in low tones with two men, villagers who had the look of desperation in their eyes. They nodded as Thomas pressed something into their hands. As the night grew darker and the lanterns burned lower, Thomas took Eleanor's hand, cold and rough against her warm skin. "Come, my love," he whispered. "I want to show you something." Eleanor smiled, trusting him, letting him lead her toward the widow's oak. The mist grew thicker as they approached, swirling around their ankles like silent serpents. At the base of the tree, two figures stepped from the shadows, the men from earlier, their hats pulled low over their faces. "Thomas?" Eleanor's voice was soft, but fear laced the edges of it. Thomas turned to her, his eyes dark, his face unreadable. "It's for the best, Eleanor." Before she could react, the men grabbed her arms, pulling her back against the cold, rough bark of the tree. The world spun, the lantern light flickered, and the shadows seemed to dance in the mist. "Thomas," she screamed, her voice breaking. "What are you doing?" His hands were cold. "No." Eleanor's scream pierced the night, echoing across the clearing. The dagger plunged into her chest, once, twice, and the pain was a fire that stole her breath, her scream turning to a choking gasp as her blood soaked the front of her gown, dripping onto the roots of the widow's oak. The men turned away, unable to watch as Eleanor's eyes dimmed, her head falling forward, her dark hair hiding her pale, blood-splattered face. Thomas fell to his knees, the dagger slipping from his hand. "It's done," he whispered, but the words were empty. Together, they dug a shallow grave beneath the tree, throwing Eleanor's lifeless body into the cold earth, her wedding dress stained crimson, her lifeless eyes staring up at the branches above. They covered her quickly, the soil damp and heavy, pressing down on her broken body. As they worked, the mist grew thicker, the lanterns flickering violently, casting monstrous shadows across their faces. When they were finished, they stood, breathing heavily, the grave uneven, the earth disturbed and soft. "Let's go," Thomas said, his voice hollow. As they walked back toward the village, the mist swallowed them, hiding the grave, hiding the blood, hiding the betrayal. But the widow's oak had seen everything. At dawn, the mist lay heavy over Wolf's Hollow, and the village was silent. Birds did not sing, and the air was cold, biting at the skin. Under the widow's oak, the soil shifted. A pale, bloodied hand broke through the earth, fingers curled, nails torn and dirty. The mist around the tree turned red, swirling like smoke as a whisper rose from beneath the ground, soft but clear, carried on the cold breeze. "Thomas." In the distance, the church bell tolled once. The ghost bride had returned. This story divide on 10 parts, upload every day, one by one. Thanks for watching.